I want you gone by lunch, Aaron said, leaning casually against the doorframe of my office with that same smug expression he'd worn since we were kids. The board agrees. You're not leadership material. I kept placing my belongings into a cardboard box, slowly, methodically, wrapping the antique Murano glass paperweight I'd bought on my last trip to Venice. Not that Aaron would recognize craftsmanship if it bit him. Nothing to say, Delilah? He asked. No tears, no desperate pleading. I glanced at my watch, a vintage Cartier I'd inherited from our grandfather, kept out of sight beneath my sleeve, like everything else I was preparing. Actually, I do have something to say, I replied calmly. Shouldn't you be getting ready for the 3 p.m. board meeting? His smirk twitched. What board meeting? The emergency session, I said, called this morning. He scoffed and pulled out his phone. As he read the alert, his face darkened. This is absurd. I didn't call any meeting. No, I said, placing a small leather notebook into the box. You didn't. While Aaron spent the last 6 years posturing as the face of Alder and Knox Textiles here in Asheville, I'd been quietly building something stronger. My private equity group Pinegate Holdings had been acquiring Alder and Knox shares behind the scenes, using subsidiary firms and silent partners. Waiting for this moment. My phone buzzed. A text from my CFO. L shares secured, 83%, ready when you are. Aaron's tone sharpened. What the hell are you smiling at? You're the one being fired. I placed the final item in the box, a framed photo of our grandfather shaking hands with Eleanor Roosevelt during the company's founding year, 1947. Just thinking how quickly things can shift, I said softly. Nothing's shifting. The board doesn't want a soft touch like you in charge. All your talk about digital strategy and sustainability? It's naive. The company needs tradition. Tradition? I echoed. You mean the wasteful supply chain you refuse to modernize? The outdated HR policies bleeding us of top talent? Or the nepotism that gave you your title? He stiffened. The board backs me. Maybe they did, I said, glancing at my phone again. But they'll be very interested in the ownership report we're reviewing at 3. Ownership report? I know you hold 20%. Dad left it to you. He narrowed his eyes. And? I smiled. Let's just say the remaining 83% now has a new owner. See you at the meeting, Aaron. You own 20%. Want to know who owns the other 80? I asked softly. Aaron's face turned a shade redder. The shares are divided among the board. Always have been. We were divided, I said, until Pinegate Holdings began acquiring them. Quietly, strategically, until we reached a controlling interest. He laughed. Forced, brittle. Pinegate? That firm, gobbling up legacy companies all over the South, what did they have to do with this? I picked up my box and headed to the door. As I passed him, I paused. You'll find out at 3 p.m. Try not to be late, brother dear. I leaned in slightly. It'd be a shame for the outgoing CEO to miss his own demotion. Demotion? He grabbed my arm, suddenly pale. What the hell are you talking about? I looked at his hand until he let go. Did you ever wonder why I never fought back? I asked. All these years? Your condescension, your sabotage, the way you called me soft, idealistic. Little sister who wasn't made for business. He shook his head. You're bluffing. Then check the shareholder registry. It was updated this morning. He practically stumbled over to his desk, fingers trembling as he typed. I stood silently, watching his posture collapse as the page loaded. His brows knit. He scrolled. Stopped. Scrolled again. His lips moved. Silent. This can't be real, he whispered. Pinegate owns everything? Almost everything, I said. You still have your 20%, for now. His eyes lifted to mine, and at last, understanding landed. No. Delilah Knox, I said, stepping into the hallway. Founder and managing director of Pinegate Holdings. The hallway had fallen unusually quiet. Through the glass walls, I saw staff frozen in place, some pretending to work, others openly watching. Everyone felt it. The shift in gravity. Funny, I said over my shoulder. What little sister can do while big brother is busy giving speeches. I left him there, hunched over the screen. The next act would play out in the boardroom, a place that had always felt like a stage to me, with its sweeping mountain views and long walnut table polished to a shine. I arrived early, sat at the far end, where Aaron once made me sit, to learn how real leaders behave. The boardroom was empty for now, but not for long. My phone buzzed. From legal. Transition paperwork finalized. From HR. New leadership structure approved. From my assistant. Security briefed and in position. I smiled. Curtains up. Standing by for your signal. The text from my assistant lit up my phone at 2:55 p.m. Aaron burst into the Alder & Knox boardroom 5 minutes early for once, looking nothing like the composed executive he usually portrayed. His custom-tailored navy suit was creased at the sleeves, his collar askew. The swagger was gone. All that remained was urgency barely held together. "There's been a mistake," he blurted to the gathered board members. "The shareholder registry, it's wrong." Howard Lynn, Alder & Knox's most senior board member, calmly adjusted his cufflinks and glanced at his copy of the documents. "No mistake, Aaron," he said. "We've all received verification from Pinegate Holdings. The transfer of ownership is legitimate." "Huh. But who are these people?" Aaron demanded. "How did they even get that many shares without anyone noticing?" I raised a brow. "Maybe if we'd modernized our shareholder tracking software like I suggested 3 years ago, you wouldn't be asking that now." The room was nearly full. Legal counsel, former executives, legacy partners, many of whom had known our family for decades, had gathered for this. Whispers passed like wind through wheat. Everyone sensed it. The rain was ending. At exactly 3:00 p.m., my assistant Clara stepped through the door. "Is ready to proceed. Mrs. Knox, Pinegate Holdings Managing Director, is ready to proceed." Aaron's head snapped toward her. "What did you call her? Ms. Knox? I'm the Knox in charge here." "Are you?" I asked, rising from my chair, brushing imaginary dust from my dark green wool suit. The one Aaron said looked too executive for my soft skill set last week. Check the screen behind you. The massive wall monitor flickered to life, revealing Pinegate Holdings' executive page. Front and center, Delilah Knox, founder and managing director. The room buzzed with murmurs. Aaron blinked rapidly, then grabbed the edge of the table for balance. "That's not possible," he whispered. "You're just my kid sister." "Your kid sister," I said, walking past him slowly, "who spent the last 6 years building a $50 billion 0-cents investment firm while you played king with inherited power." Howard Lynn cleared his throat again. Perhaps Delilah could explain for the board's clarity. I tapped my phone. A series of slides took over the screen. Acquisition logs, corporate filings, layered holding companies, all tracing back to Pinegate Holdings. While Aaron focused on maintaining appearances, I focused on strategy. We bought out every retiring shareholder over the last 4 years, quietly, legally, efficiently. Aaron sputtered. "You can't do this. We're not for sale." "We were," I replied calmly. "Every time someone cashed out, Pinegate was there. And now," I added with a smile, "we're here to collect." If you're as ready as I am to see what happens when the boardroom doors finally close, don't forget to subscribe. You won't want to miss what comes next. "Every time the stock dipped, we bought more," said Howard Lynn, his voice holding something dangerously close to admiration. "Different names, different funds, different shells, until you owned us all." Aaron shook his head, still trying to process. "But the money, the capital it would take to do all that. How?" I leaned forward slightly, resting my hand on the polished table. "Remember that tiny consulting agency I started after college? The one you said was a hobby?" He stared, silent. "It grew, slowly, then rapidly. We reinvested, expanded, scaled. While you were out enjoying your 3 martini lunches at the golf club, I was meeting with founders, building out supply chains, securing investors who believed in the long game. My phone buzzed again. Security teams in place, prepared to escort ex-CEO if required. I stood and moved to the head of the table, taking the seat Aaron once called the decision-maker's spot. Now, I said, calm and composed, let's talk about the future of Alder and Knox, starting with its leadership. Aaron straightened up, a flicker of the old defiance returning. You can't fire me. I'm still a shareholder. A minority shareholder, I corrected, one who just spent the morning trying to bully and fire the majority owner. Some of the board members shifted in their chairs, recalling, perhaps with regret, their silent support of Aaron's many missteps. But I'm not you, I continued. I don't fire people out of pride or pettiness, so I'm giving you a choice. He eyed me warily. What choice? I slid a folder across the table. Option 1, I said, sell your 20% stake to Pinegate Holdings at full market value, leave with a generous severance, and your dignity. Option 2, he asked. Keep your shares, I said, but transition into a position more aligned with your actual skill set. He narrowed his eyes. Which is? Junior operations manager, I replied. A pin could have dropped in the boardroom. Eyes darted between us like spectators at Wimbledon. You're doing this for revenge? Aaron snapped. Because I underestimated you? No, I said, rising to full height. This isn't revenge, Aaron. It's correction. I let that sit a moment. A chance to learn what I learned. That leadership isn't inherited, it's earned. And it's about building something bigger than yourself. I sat in my real office, the entire top floor of Pinegate Tower, overlooking downtown Asheville. The city below was beginning to stir, sunlight catching on the glass and steel of a dozen buildings I either owned outright or held quiet stakes in. My phone buzzed endlessly. Board members, brilliant play, knew you had it in you. Former execs, always believed in you, let's reconnect. Industry leaders, strategic genius, lunch next week. And finally, Aaron, we need to talk. Clara stepped in, carrying the morning briefings. Your brother's in the lobby, Miss Knox. He's been waiting since just after 6. I turned to the security feed. Aaron looked unfamiliar. His suit was wrinkled, collar loose, hair messy. No entourage, no confidence. Just a man who'd finally been forced to look in the mirror. Send him up, I said, and bring me the employee handbook. He stepped inside slowly, taking in the skyline view with a mix of awe and unease. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a direct line of sight to the Alder and Knox headquarters, where he'd reigned until yesterday. Nice office, he said at last, bigger than mine. Was yours, I replied smoothly. Being the actual CEO has its perks. I gestured to the seat across from me. Have you made your decision? He sank into the chair, visibly older than his 41 years. How long were you planning this? Planning? I gave a small smile. No, Aaron, you planned this. Every time you dismissed my proposals, every time you cut me off in meetings, every time you told the board I was emotional or idealistic, you laid the foundation. But Pinegate, he trailed off. It's massive. The capital, the structure. How? I tapped a button on the glass desk. The wall lit up with our portfolio. Layer upon layer of companies, funds, real estate, partnerships. I started small, one investment, then another, reinvested, expanded, grew quietly. While you were playing monarch in Dad's office, I added, I was building a kingdom of my own. He stared as the numbers filled the screen. 50 billion in assets, he whispered. Over 30 companies. How did no one know? They saw what they wanted to see, I said. Nobody ever looked deeper. Because nobody thought Delilah Knox could be more than the quiet sister with too many ideas. My phone buzzed again. Alder and Knox signage update underway. New branding materials approved. Aaron watched out the window, his former empire now being rebranded in real time. So, what happens now? He asked. To me? Aaron asked, his voice uneven. To Alder and Knox? That depends on you, I replied. I spread the employee handbook across my desk, flipping it to the page I'd marked. Junior operations manager, starting salary is exactly what you paid me 5 years ago. I met his eyes. Ironic, isn't it? And if I refuse? Then take the buyout. I tapped a button on my desk. The display behind me shifted again, this time to Alder and Knox's true financials, pulled from internal audits, risk forecasts, and quietly collected reports. Take a close look, I said. The outdated logistics software you refused to upgrade, the engineers and strategists you drove away, the sustainability programs you vetoed. Without Pinegate's quiet intervention, this company would have collapsed within 18 months. Aaron's face went pale as the projections loaded. Red, slopes downward, margin erosion, legal liabilities. He stared in disbelief. I didn't know, he murmured. No, you didn't, I said, because knowing would have required accepting that you were wrong. About the business, about the future, about me. Clara's voice came through the intercom. Ms. Knox, the transition team is ready for system deployment. Also, local media is requesting a statement regarding the leadership change. Aaron looked up, shaken. You're really going through with this? Demoting your own brother? I gave a small shrug, like you fired your own sister. But I'm giving you something you never gave me, a path back in, a chance to learn, to earn. He scoffed, though it sounded more weary than defiant. Starting at the bottom? No, I corrected. Starting where you should have always started, on the floor. Understanding the people, the systems, the purpose. No shortcuts, no titles. No entitlement. He didn't speak for a while, just stared out at Asheville's skyline, now partially reshaped by Pinegate's touch. New rooftops, new energy. Did you hate me? He finally asked. All these years? No, Aaron, I said honestly. I pitied you. You thought being born first made you the leader. I knew better. I looked out the window beside him. Leadership isn't inherited, it's earned. Over the next year, Alder and Knox transformed. Under Pinegate's guidance, outdated systems were rebuilt. The culture, once top-down and stagnant, was redefined. Innovation flowed, talent returned. And Aaron, he learned. Slowly, painfully, but step by step he rebuilt himself. On the operations floor, he saw what employees needed. In product development, he watched innovation thrive. With time, he earned the respect he had once assumed came with his last name. 1 year later, I called him into my office. The skyline had changed again. The Pinegate logo now gleamed where Alder and Knox's once stood. Your performance review is in, I said, opening his file. Exceptional. Seems you can learn after all. I did, he said quietly. Because you finally showed me how. About business, about leadership, about family. I paused. Which is why I'm offering you a promotion. Aaron looked up, surprised. Senior Director of Operations. You've earned it. This time with real responsibility. His expression softened. No arrogance, only gratitude. Thank you. For everything. For taking back your power and for showing me what real power actually means. We stood by the window, looking out at the city that now felt like ours. The Knox name still matters, I said, but not because we inherited it, because we rebuilt it. He nodded. He finally understood. Real leadership isn't passed down. It's earned. As the sun slipped behind the Blue Ridge skyline, casting long shadows across what we now shared, I realized sometimes the best revenge isn't reclaiming control, it's teaching someone how to deserve it. 5 years later, at Alder and Knox's 50th anniversary, Aaron and I stood on stage. Innovation through understanding. Leadership through learning, we announced. He adjusted his badge, Executive Vice President of Operations. Remember when I fired you? He whispered. I smiled. Remember when I bought the company? He chuckled. Best hostile takeover ever. They still call it the Knox Revelation. Behind us, Pinegate and Alder and Knox glowed. No longer rivals, but partners. We didn't just preserve a legacy, I said. We built something better. Aaron nodded. You built it. I finally learned how to help. And maybe that was the greatest win of all. If my story meant something to you, if you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or told you didn't belong, leave a comment. I'd love to hear how you reclaimed your power. And if you're still on that journey, don't stop. Build quietly. Lead boldly. Earn it, step by step. Subscribe to follow my next chapter. And remember, sometimes the strongest voice is the one they never saw coming.